They told him the engine would destroy itself. They said the modification violated every safety limit the engineers had spent years calculating. They warned him that if he pushed the throttle just a few inches farther, the propeller would tear free. The cylinders would overheat, and the aircraft would become a flaming coffin at 200 feet above the ocean. So the engineers banned it. They locked the paperwork. They stamped it unauthorized. They ordered him never to use it in combat. But then, 7 Japanese Zeros appeared at sea level, and suddenly rules no longer mattered. Only speed did. The war that forced desperation. By 1942, the Pacific War was no longer about perfect machines. It was about survival. The Japanese Mitsubishi A6M0 dominated the skies at low altitude. It turned tighter, climbed faster, and could chase almost anything flying beneath 5,000 feet. American pilots learned quickly that if a Zero caught you down low, your odds dropped to nearly nothing. The U.S. Navy and Army Air Forces had power, armor, and firepower, but they lacked one thing the Zero had mastered: sea-level performance. Engines were designed for altitude: superchargers, intercoolers, boost regulators. Everything was optimized for high flight. But combat didn't care about engineering charts. Combat happened where planes crashed. Combat happened where ships burned. Combat happened just above the waves. And that's where pilots were dying. The engine mod that should not exist. The aircraft was fast on paper, but not fast enough. Its engine, a powerful radial, had hidden potential buried behind safety margins. Engineers had limited its manifold pressure to prevent overheating, detonation, and catastrophic failure. One pilot noticed something strange during test flights. At sea level, the engine wasn't struggling. It was restrained. The air was thick, dense, perfect for combustion. Yet the engine was being choked, held back by regulations, written for peacetime safety, not wartime survival. So the pilot did something dangerous. He adjusted the boost regulator. Not slightly, aggressively. Horsepower surged beyond approved limits. Temperatures spiked. The engine roared in a way it never had before. On the ground, engineers saw the data and froze. Cylinder pressure, unsafe. Oil temperature, unacceptable. Engine lifespan, drastically reduced. Their verdict was immediate: ban it. They said the engine might last minutes. They said it could fail without warning. They said no responsible pilot would risk it. The modification was officially forbidden. But war has a way of revisiting forbidden ideas. The day the sky closed in. The mission was routine. A low-altitude patrol over open ocean. Clear weather, calm seas. Then the warning came. 7 dots. 7 fast-moving specks rising from the horizon. Japanese Zeros. The pilot knew instantly this wasn't a dogfight he could win with turning. At sea level, the Zero owned the sky. Climbing would be suicide. Turning would be death. Zeros dove well. Diving wouldn't matter. Zeros dove well. There was only one chance: outrun them. But standard power wouldn't be enough. As the first Zero closed in, tracers slicing the air, the pilot made a decision that violated every order he'd been given. He reached for the throttle and pushed past the red line, unleashing the forbidden engine. The engine screamed. Manifold pressure surged beyond safe limits. The needle trembled where engineers said it should never go. The aircraft shook violently as raw power slammed through the propeller. Speed climbed, not gradually, violently. The pilot felt the plane break free, like a predator released from chains. Spray whipped off the ocean. Beneath him, as the aircraft skimmed, just above the waves. Behind him, the Zeros followed. At first. Then something unexpected happened. The distance stopped closing. Then slowly, it began to widen. 7 Zeros, and a problem they didn't expect. The Japanese pilots pushed their engines hard. Full throttle, emergency power. But their aircraft were optimized for maneuverability, not sustained sea-level chase. Their engines overheated faster. Their speed plateaued. Meanwhile, the forbidden engine mod did exactly what the engineers feared, and what the pilot needed. It converted dense sea-level air into raw, brutal speed. The aircraft tore across the ocean faster than it ever had in testing. 1 Zero peeled away. Then another. Then a third. Fuel consumption skyrocketed. Temperatures climbed into dangerous territory. But the engine held. Minutes passed like hours. By the time the pilot glanced back again, all 7 Zeros were gone. The silence after escape. When the aircraft landed, the ground crew smelled it immediately. Hot oil, scorched metal, an engine pushed far beyond its intended life. Engineers swarmed the plane, expecting catastrophic damage. They found wear, stress fractures, signs of abuse. But the engine hadn't failed. It had survived. The pilot didn't brag. He didn't celebrate. He simply said, "It worked." The engineers changed their minds. The data was undeniable. At sea level, the modification transformed the aircraft. Yes, it reduced engine lifespan. Yes, it increased risk. But it also did something no approved setting could do. It allowed an American fighter to outrun a zero where it mattered most. The ban was quietly reconsidered. The modification was rewritten, not as standard power, but as emergency combat power. A tool of last resort, not for every mission, but for the moment when survival demanded more than safety. The real cost of speed. Not every engine survived the modification. Some failed. Some pilots paid the price. But others lived, because for a few critical minutes, their aircraft became something engineers never intended. A weapon instead of a machine. In war, perfection doesn't win. Adaptation does. Deep, memorable closing. History remembers the aces. It remembers the victories. But it rarely remembers the moments when rules were broken, not for glory, but for survival. That engine modification wasn't designed to last. It wasn't safe. It wasn't approved. But on a day when 7 zeros filled the sky, it gave one pilot the only thing that mattered, one more chance to live. Because in war, the line between failure and legend is often drawn not by engineers, but by the courage to push past the red line when there is no other way home.